G'day guys and welcome. You're listening to The Unaffected. Stay listening as we chat with Zoe Hoad about her struggles with an eating disorder and how she was able to come out the other side.
Today we talked to Zoe about how she saw her battle with her eating disorder affect her family and friends and how she's gone about repairing those relationships during her recovery.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to The Unaffected, the podcast where we share the unheard stories of those affected by a loved one's disability, illness or condition. My name is Nick and with me as always is Jack, and we are lucky enough to be brought to you by Australia's best boutique care agency, Care Match Australia. Check out their social media pages on Instagram and Facebook for all your caring needs.
G'day guys, today we welcome Zoe Hoad. Zoe is a successful model and actor who in her past has battled with both bulimia and anorexia, which saw her admitted to an eating disorder clinic on 3 separate occasions for 3 months at a time. At her lightest, Zoe weighed just 39 kilos. She's been good enough to come in and have a chat with us today about what she's been through and also the way that her battle affected her loved ones. A little warning for this one today, guys. Another very real topic that some of you may relate to. If you do identify with any of the topics that Zoe talks about today, please make sure that you reach out to someone and get the support you need. But just to reiterate, this is a very real topic today, so there might be some things we discuss that are quite confronting. Thank you very much for coming on today, Zoe.
You're so welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Excited to have you on, have a chat about something that Nick and I have wanted to talk about with someone but haven't had the opportunity to.
Yeah.
To start with, how about you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what life was like for you in your teenage years?
I grew up here on the Gold Coast and life was good in my teenage years, or early, I shouldn't say teenage years because it was quite tumultuous in my teenage years, but in my early adolescence, it was great. Fun, tomboy, loved life, and then high school happened and it all kind of just went downhill from there.
What happened in high school?
Oh God, what didn't happen in high school? It was just at the time that I entered high school, my biological father left my life, and in a really bitter, in a bitter way. And I didn't deal with that well, and I just started modeling, and I think I didn't deal well because I was already quite a sensitive person. I got bullied a lot. I don't even really know why in the beginning. And then from there, it just snowballed downhill and it was a self-destructive kind of thing for me. Yeah.
Were you close to your dad before he left the picture?
Yeah, I was. I was with him 3 days a week, sometimes 2 days a week. And then when I was 7, though, he moved to Darwin. So I didn't see him very much. But when I did, he wasn't very mentally stable. So I didn't get what I needed or what anyone would need because he's not right in the head. But it was just a really bizarre relationship between my biological father and I, really hard to put into words because he was just so insane. And I didn't really understand that it wasn't my fault until I decided to get better and look at things for the way that they were and almost feel sorry for him instead of taking it out of myself and saying I'm not good enough or I'm not this, that or the other.
When you had time to reflect on it and look back, yeah.
Which was a lot of internal work and backward steps and kind of trying to pull out a thorn that you expected everyone else to know where it was because I was so touchy and, Yeah. Yeah.
So how'd you get into modelling and how'd that happen? How old were you?
I was 13 when I had my first modelling job. Or maybe I was 12 or 13. It was for a local fashion boutique and it was just very basic and nothing very riveting about that. I don't have a cool story. I wish I did. I don't. Yeah.
Did your mum submit you for it or was it a thing you came and you said, I want to do this? Or?
I was actually on Facebook Facebook.
Yeah.
You can talk about Facebook and now it's friggin' Meta or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. But yeah, Facebook. Good for something.
Just saw an ad and decided you want to do it.
No, it wasn't an ad. It was an individual fashion person reached out to me and goes, I'd love for you to model for my brand Asuya on the Gold Coast. And I was like, yeah. And then I think that gave me a little portfolio and we went, maybe we'll go to a modelling agency. And I went to an agency in Brisbane and I signed with them when I think I was too young at that time and I came back a couple of years later at 16 or 17. Yeah.
Did you love it straight away?
I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah, but just the
young.
title of having a model at that age and yeah.
Yeah, I always idolised my mum. Her best friend's daughter was a model growing up and I always just idolised her and my auntie was a model and I always thought, oh, she was a model. And it's funny how you blow things out of proportion when you're young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
When did you start taking the modelling more seriously, and when do you think you started being more focused on your appearance?
I don't think it was necessarily that I ever took modelling that seriously because I'm quite a free spirit and I know who I am and I've always been very earthed, but I just was very sad. So I feel like modelling wasn't something that I think most people would see it as an escape. And then when I got to understand the industry for what it was when I was first modelling, it wasn't, this new wave of everybody's accepted. It was still very much so praying mantises on the runway and I shouldn't say that, but tall, skinny figures on the runway, and I was short and probably naturally I'm naturally a size 6 to 8, but the skinnier you got, the more you felt comfortable, and then it was just kind of a snowball effect from 1 kilo to the next, and it also satisfied my inner sadness from a few comments that my dad would make as a young girl. Maybe I was 13 as well. What happened at 13? He would always call me fat, or his mum would call me fat, or very strict and regimented around food, and just developed these or implemented these behaviours and ideas into my head as a young girl that otherwise I probably wouldn't have had to worry about. Jump on the trampoline after a custard tart and off I went. Like, it didn't really matter. But yeah, it was just introduced at a young age. So it was always in my head. And then when I started modelling, it was exacerbated.
It's a good consideration for parents because myself, I'm into the gym and very into my fitness, and sometimes I catch myself or my wife catches me making a comment about someone's aesthetics or their appearance in front of my 4-year-old daughter, and my wife gives me a big old elbow in the ribs, and she's very quick to point out, like, don't start those thought patterns in her head.
It's so important. And when I would hear, and he would also make comments about, not that everyone does, everyone's got that inner dialogue, and sometimes, like on the way here, I looked out the window and I saw a girl eating her boogers. And I went, that, like, you can't help but judge people sometimes. But obviously that's a bit
it's
wrong.
okay to judge.
It's a bit wrong. But, like, it's natural. But when you put that onto an innocent young mind, which, we all start out with, and then we live, and then we get these ideas, and society kind of squishes us a bit and makes us have a generalized idea of what's wrong and right. Not that there really is such a thing when you really know that, but that basically what I'm trying to say is when you're young, it really sticks.
Yeah, I suppose it's important to also just watch the significance you're giving to those observations as well, and the context you make them in.
When did your body image start becoming dysfunctional, and what were the early signs that maybe, or whether you noticed or someone else noticed, that was maybe getting out of hand?
I think when I actively pursued weight loss, and I always had body dysmorphia. I always thought that I was fat because it was embedded in my brain to not eat this, watch that, and that was from when I was 12. And I started when I was being bullied in school. I was like, maybe I'll be skinny, and I always was just very fixated on the girls around me's weight, and not openly, an inner dialogue. I would never say anything to anyone, but I just always noticed when someone was skinny. It was like the first thing that I saw, and I went on Tumblr, which was the best or the biggest thing at that point. I think I was in grade 9, and I would you could look up hashtags, not dissimilar to Instagram, and I would look up skinny or bones or ribs or all these things, and from there it just kept going, and it became an obsession and a goal of mine to just basically wither away. And I think looking back, it was a way of, because the images that they weren't like poppy or colourful, they were very dark and black and white and dull, and I think it was a reflection of what I felt on the inside, and it was something I was trying to achieve that represented sadness and lifelessness. And if I could go back and show myself what it would look like for the next 7 years of my life, I definitely would never have pursued such a silly thing. I hope that answers the question. I think I got carried away.
That's good. I think it's very easy to get caught up in those sort of body image for anyone. I mean, not to draw comparisons to that at all, but Jack and I have spoken, we've had our own battles with our body images. I was quite overweight when I was young, quite overweight and under what's the word? Under whatever it is. I'll just edit that bit out. But yeah, to get caught up in that, you start eating healthy and focus on your food a little bit more, and it can, before you know it, just get away from you a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I imagine, especially in those early years, it could just, tenfold that could happen.
I think as well, because I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know how to lose weight. I didn't know. So I Googled and I researched, and it was always very unhealthy. And I mean, it's really great for people today to be able to tune into a podcast and go, how do I get better? And how did this girl recover from an eating disorder? And I always have wanted to be able to give that to someone, because I know how much I took from the people around me when I was unwell. Not intentionally, but it taxes a lot of people to be unwell, those who care about you anyway.
Well, that's a big part of what we're doing here, that we focus on the people generally around the person that's going through that tough time. So to recognize that and to be able to try to focus on that and help spread that message, I think for anyone that listening, like you said, that might be going through something, can definitely be a big help, and hopefully learn from your story.
Thank you.
Was there any pressure from within the industry on you to lose weight or to look a certain way?
I mean, yeah, but also it was never verbalized. It was just like little things here and there. Like, no, they never said specifically you need to lose weight, but when somebody's doing you up and they're tugging on you to try and zip up the thing, you go, oh God, what could I have done to prevent this? Or am I going to look fat in this? And a lot of the time you take a photo and it's all about angles and lighting. And if someone got the angles and lighting wrong, I was taking it out of myself. And it happens all the time. Like, even when I do photo shoots now, I'm like, dear God, they could have picked a better one than that. But yeah, it's just a part of it, and you can't take it unto who you actually are, and like it even matters anyway, because
I think it's great. You see it a lot more these days on social media, that there is a lot of, whether it's Instagram influencers or models, whatever it might be, that do show that difference between when they're posing and the lighting and the difference compared to when they're just standing normally. And I think it's great that it's getting spread, that message, a lot more now, that it is about, it's a profession, and that's what they're paid to do, is to look good, but it doesn't mean that's what they look like all the time. And that's important to remember, that it's just not this idolized image of people, that they are just real people.
I think it's one of the negative effects of social media as well, is it's just created this culture of comparing yourself to other people as well. Which, like, from the gym and the bodybuilding perspective for guys, like, you're always comparing yourself to these dudes on the stage in the Olympia, and it's pretty unhealthy. And it's good, as Nick was saying, that people are getting more honest, because they're the first to admit now that when they're on there just showing every muscle possible in their anatomy, that's them flexing as hard as you can. Yet 5 years ago, everyone was led to believe that was them just relaxed. So
wow.
And they've dehydrated themselves to get rid of the layers of the water between the skin and muscles. It's not a natural thing that you just look like that all the time.
And a bit
also,
of pharmaceutical
what it does to your health. Like, what it does to your health is just not worth it. Because I was so lucky that I didn't have anything long term that affected me with. I mean, I do, but not anything that is like some girls have bags that they can't go to the bathroom because they've abused laxatives to a point of no return, and some people have holes in their esophagus from throwing up so much, and there's so many things that can go wrong. Some girls are so unlucky to have cardiac arrest from electrolyte imbalances, and it's one of those things that there's two different versions of the same. They're cut from the same rag, bulimia and anorexia, and then there's also other things as well. But I had both, but it started with the anorexia, and then of course anybody gets to a point where they can't not eat anymore, and I at that point was a lot more of an extremist mentality, and I would not eat and not eat and not eat, and then I got to the point where I couldn't not eat anymore, and I would eat everything, and it was just the overwhelming guilt. Just I couldn't deal with it, so I would go and throw up, and I couldn't stop that pattern once I knew it was possible. And then I saw how much weight I was losing, and I wasn't forward thinking enough to think about how I was going to get out of this. I was just so intoxicated by the idea of something that was achievable for me that I never really thought was possible, which was being a certain size, and also being consumed by something that I thought would benefit me. And I had heard so many stories of models doing these things that made them this way, and they looked beautiful still, so why would I be the one that would, have a health implication or whatever it might be?
Yeah, you might like the way you look on the outside, but you don't notice the damage it's doing to the insides.
Exactly.
And yeah, like you said, some people get long or forever lasting side effects of that. Yeah,
As well as it keeps moving that bar of like you've got a vision in your mind of, when I get to a size 6, I want to look like this, or when I can see this, that's going to be when I'm happy. But as soon as you get there, the bar's shifted, and all of a sudden you're going to be striving for something more. And it's just setting that behavior pattern of trying to attain happiness through looking a certain way, I suppose.
Yeah.
When did someone first notice that you might have became a little disordered with your eating habits?
When I was doing all my demonic research with the food, weight, shape thing, I was learning what not to eat and what to eat, and none of it was factual now that I know about nutrition and what actually makes your body work. And I started removing things and separating things and just really over controlling what was on my plate, to a point where there was like no sauce allowed on this side, and just like really bizarre little, didn't even make sense. I look back and I'm like, you idiot. But yeah, lots of little things. And when I went to the clinic, I noticed that everyone else did the same thing. So there was the food and the particularity around that, and then there was exercise. I would exercise in unusual, just really neurotic ways. And when I felt like I shouldn't, like I'd go for walks very long every night after dinner, try and burn more calories, and I'd work out in my room if I felt like I couldn't sleep or I felt too fat before I was going to sleep. I would hold my stomach and my arms and measure where I felt I had squishiness, or it was just skin, I'm telling you. But in my sick mind, I thought that I was really fat, and I would work out before going to sleep or do squats while I was brushing my teeth, and just bizarre things. And then after all of this behavior started to have an effect on my weight, my agency said, look, you're looking very skinny. What's going on? And I had to be honest with them. And my mum was also very on top of my behavior. She was seeing her daughter go from a size, I think it was a size 10 to a size 6 in a very short period of time. And also a lot of other behaviors that came with that. But yeah.
And had your mum noticed the exercise tendencies or the changing eating patterns?
The exercise was more private. I shouldn't say private, but I was more sneaky about it. She's a funny woman. She's very dry, and what's going on there? It was always very real. So it was hard to tiptoe around because I couldn't go, oh, I'm just spelling with my P's. It was not like that. It was like, oh, what am I doing? It was, but I did my best to hide it. And I think as well, that's when bulimia came into play because I couldn't hide it and I was kind of not forced, but to make it look less like I was starving. I would eat. And also I was very hungry. So I was like, this is a win-win in my head at the time.
Cure the hunger feeling by eating, but then go even after you've thrown up?
Yeah. You would always, it's like anything, if you fill something up, you get full, but then you go and empty it and yes, I felt hungry afterwards. Yeah. And then it was just more obvious because it was like, you just ate. Why are you still eating? How are you eating that much? And it was just a really vicious cycle.
You've touched on it a little bit, but what were some of the more extreme things you would do to hide it from people?
I've never shared anything like this before, but I want to, before I go into it, I don't want it to be like, oh, she used to do this. I want to let people know how the lengths that someone will go to keep an eating disorder under wraps because they're so prevalent and people can hide them so well. I hid mine for years so well around my friends and people who knew me. And I mean, so I think anyway, they never went, hey, you've got this. But it's so hideable. And there's a lot of functioning eating disorders around where, people might not throw up every day, but they do it every now and then. And that's still an eating disorder. It's still disordered eating, disordered intake, disordered perception of normal, and to achieve something that is not coming naturally for whatever reason, sorry. And it's a detriment to your health, and it's terrible. It's a terrible space to live in, and it will always get worse, and it will snowball, and you will wish you never started. And I just want to put that out there first before I go into nitty gritty. But some of the things that I did, I would eat everything that I could, and I would purge, and I never use that word purge. It's just a weird word to me. I would throw up. Sorry, I'm getting it's such a hard thing to talk about.
Yeah,
I've got so much
okay.
in my mind because I don't remember so much of my life because I was so malnourished. And what did I do? I just ate and I threw up and I avoided anyone knowing, and I would do whatever I could to avoid it and avoid talking about it. And if anyone spoke about it, I was so reactive and explosive. It was just so impossible to talk about. So
at what stage did you recognize that your eating patterns had become disordered? Were you aware from the beginning, or was it kind of that state of denial where you're doing things but you don't put that label of an eating disorder on them?
I'd been to psychiatrists and psychologists that diagnosed my behavior as anorexia and then bulimia. But yeah, I knew what it was, but I didn't, it was my friend at the time, which is so sick to say, but it was my best friend. And it was the only thing that was consistent, and it was the only thing that gave me any level of control over my life, or perception of control, I should say, because I was completely out of control.
What was your overall mental health like at this stage?
It didn't exist. It was really, I didn't have any hope, and I just thought that life had squished me from being bullied in school to a point of literally not going anymore. I went to 3 different high schools. I got bullied out of all 3 of them. Started modelling. That didn't help the bullying because it was a perception that I was better than what I thought I was, but as in people thought I was someone I wasn't because of what I was doing. And it made the bullying worse when I had no self-worth anyway. I'm trying to put myself where I was, and I can't because it's so dark. It's such a...
Yeah.
I was dead on the inside. I didn't have any hope. I didn't have any idea of hope. or of light or of anything normal. Like everything was just so back to back bad that I didn't have, I just didn't think life would be good. And I didn't think about the future. I just thought about being skinny. That's all I thought about.
At what point did you realise you needed help? And was it your idea or was it those around you?
I never wanted help. I did want help, but I never wanted to leave the pattern that I was in because I had so much comfort there. But I knew that I was sick and I wanted my life back.
When the modelling agency brought you in and told you that you were looking skinny and you said that you were quite honest with them, what happened from there?
I went to the clinic because I had to tell them I can't work anymore as well because my mum had decided that I would be going to the clinic. But they were completely understandable and they were fine. They were fine. They'd had models experience that before and go to the same place. So I guess it was not really something new for old school model agents to see.
How did your mum identify that it had become an eating disorder?
Oh, I was so obvious by the end of it. I was so entrenched in and tunnel vision that I became just that. And the other things that come with it are irritability and, my face was puffy all the time and I had no zest. I know I'm talking like this because I'm in quite a serious mode, but I'm loud and I don't know, I had a lot more life in me and I just became this tunnel vision demon person that was just cared about food, sleep, repeat, like literally just, and also I was becoming very thin, so it was quite noticeable. My uncle called me Slim Shady because I was just always shady and getting skinnier and skinnier. And there was always room for humor in my family, and I think that's something that really helped me see the light in such a dark place as well. So I'm grateful for that.
What were those first conversations about getting you help and going to the clinic?
There was never really an intervention. It was always, I knew that I was unwell and I would have breakdowns and I would get so frustrated with myself. I'd pull my hair out and kick and scream because I hated my reflection. And I don't know if that was a cry for help or if that was, because I look back and I don't remember who that was. It wasn't me. It wasn't who I am today. And to think back on it and try and remember where my head was at, it's really, really difficult. And I hope that I'm doing an okay job. But yeah, I guess it was just all of these different intermittent breakdowns and moments of frustration from my mum as well and my family of, we know exactly what's going on, snap the fuck out of it, or sorry, I hope I can swear in here.
Yeah.
Snap out of it, or you're off to the asylum or whatever it was. I still don't know what that place was. It was very confronting. But the public system Mum had done a lot of research with eating disorders and tried to find a lot of closure on the internet. And she'd found that typically people who went to the public system didn't have a very good result. So she found New Farm Clinic and I was sent there.
Tell us what you can about those visits to the clinic.
The visits, there were stays. It was very dark and grey and an older place. It had a lot of it wasn't Shutter Island, but it was definitely a very hospital feeling. It was a psychiatric hospital, so there wasn't. It wasn't like, oh, there's some girls with mental health problems in here. It was like there's everyone with every mental health problem in here, and it's like a horror movie. It was the worst energy. When you walk into a place and you go, is this place haunted? It was like that, but I was there for as long as I could see. And I couldn't get out unless I gained weight. And that was my biggest fear, was gaining weight, letting go of everything that I had tried so hard to avoid.
And were there therapy sessions with psychiatrists in there?
There was, and I had a crush on my psychiatrist.
That helps.
It did not help. He was so hot. I reckon if I saw him, I'd still have a crush on him. He was so hot.
If he's listening out there,
I won't say his name. But yeah, we did have psych sessions, and I did find them reflective, but I didn't find them as helpful as I would say meditating or doing something to your own research of how to get out of something would be. It was very much so felt like homework assigned to you as opposed to a willing thing, because the way that they treated the schedule that they operated on was very systematic and impersonal, and everyone was a bit like cattle. I'm not sure if they still use the same tactic, but I did not find it helpful at all. As someone who kind of goes against the grain anyway, it was a really hard thing to abide by.
Would they monitor your eating to make sure you're eating, or was that?
Yeah. So they would sit. When I first got there, there was a table full of, I think there was about 8 girls on the table, and we all ate together, and there was a nurse that watched everyone eat, which is already, you shouldn't put 8 people with an eating disorder at one fucking table. You pick up everyone's habits and you go, she's doing that, I'm going to do that. She put a potato in a pocket, I'm going to put a potato in a pocket. She did that, I did that. Everyone was circulating on this neurotic how to avoid calories energy at the table, and the nurse is just sitting there watching it all unfold, and I can't even imagine what would be going on in that nurse's head if I could go back and ask her. And you had a different nurse every day, and sometimes one nurse was more lenient and the other one was more stern, and you never know what you would get away with, and it became, what can I get away with, instead of how am I going to eat this with presence and with the, mind you, the food was tuck shop food, so it wasn't something you'd want to eat anyway. But it was really hard to be calm and eat. But there was also a lot of other really sad things that went on there, like suicide attempts in the middle of the night, and just breakdowns of people that you had no idea what they were going through or what was happening, and it was just happening around you all the time, and you're in there to get better for something that's so, I would consider a completely different caliber of mental health or an issue. It's completely separate to something like severe PTSD from war veterans or psychosis, or there was a lot of other things that people were in there for, but a lot of them were also very drugged, and we were all drugged to a point where you go, how can even that tiny frame take that much tranquilizer? But when I look back on that, that's something that really freaked me out as well. And I wonder if I did damage to my brain by taking those drugs every day.
Why were they medicating?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think to make their jobs easier, probably, because, you know, when somebody has an episode of being over emotional, staff are put on to do their job, and although that might be a part of it, I think it's easier for them to go, okay, well, I've spoken to you 15 minutes and you're still not fine. Would you like a Valium? It's just easier for them, I think. Band-Aids. Yeah, it's a Band-Aid approach to, and I was 17 at the time, and I shouldn't have had that, and I shouldn't have. I was given Seroquel, and I look up what Seroquel was. I Googled it, and it's a medication for a manic bipolar people. And I found out because somebody in there said, oh, I'm on Seroquel, because you'd talk to people sometimes if you felt like they weren't going to bite your head off. And I went, oh, why are you on Seroquel? And they said, oh, I have manic bipolar. And I went, why am I on Seroquel? Why have I got that? And why have I got 2 doses of Valium with it? And why have I got antidepressants on top of that? And why am I being given laxatives when I have an eating disorder and I shouldn't be allowed laxatives?
They were giving you laxatives.
Well, some people couldn't go to the bathroom because their bowels weren't working very well from abusing laxatives, so they would give it as an option. And it's just too easy to say someone, it's like saying to someone who had a heroin addiction, would you like some Nurofen? They're going to say, oh, she's got Nurofen, I want some Nurofen. Yeah. Something. It's just a little thing, you know?
What were your relationships like with the other girls in there? Was it a supportive environment, or was it kind of showing each other little tricks to bypass the nurse's attention?
It was Well, it would circulate because there would always be someone new. There would be someone discharged. There would be someone who there was people of all ages as well. So it was never a consistent flow. But as an idea, we'd wake up at 7, have our bloods done on Wednesdays. Wake up at 7, be eating at the table by 7:15. If you missed anything on your plate, you were given a Fortisip, which is like a meal replacement. And then after meals, you would go and sit in a room for half an hour to make your food digest to make sure no one threw up. And then you would carry on your day, and they give you a timetable of group things that you might want to go to. But they were all quite play schoolish, and they weren't actually fixing anything. So I wouldn't go because it was all very sit in a circle and very impersonal is what I'm trying to say, because everyone was in there and had their issue for a reason, an underlying reason. I knew that mine was about my father, and that was never touched on. So
when you started to put a bit of weight back on, obviously you would have had to be released, I guess, lack of a better word. Did you feel any better internally, or was it in your mind? Was it just I've put on weight, I look fat now, or was it?
It was because I didn't feel good. I felt gross, and I went straight back to my old ways. That's why I was admitted 3 times for 3 months at a time, and I didn't want to be there. But I think the clinic as well gave me the perception that other people were going to fix me. No one else was going to fix me, and that took a very long time to come to terms with. And I can't stress how deep this was, because it went on for a total of 7 years. So it was a really ingrained pattern, and I didn't want to let go of it. So that 9 months was a real kind of like, I didn't want to be in there, but also it was like I was so used to this negative drama around getting better that was my life, and I didn't know anything else.
How would you summarize your battles affecting your family and friends around you? Some of the examples.
Because I was so in my head at this point that I didn't even think twice about what my family thought of me, really. I was just entrenched in my ways. So what they saw would have been not dissimilar to a possession. My mum describes it as a possession that took over my body and took away her daughter and became a Slim Shady. But they were always there supporting me. My younger sister I feel so sorry for, because she's 4 years younger than me, and she didn't have a big sister. She was always scared I was going to die. She was always, what's wrong with Zoe? And I was always breaking down, and it was never just a breakdown that was like crying. It was always a full-on breakdown and very physical and overwhelming for a young girl. And I feel I don't know how to get that time back to be her big sister, and I can't, but I'm just glad that she saw how far bad body image can take an individual. And now she's a personal trainer. So, and she's amazing, and she's so strong, and she's very firm on how she sees social media and the way that she will not lie. She will not edit her photos. She's very, very, her moral with that is so strong, and I'm so proud of her for that. And it's very rare to see a young girl be so wise.
These battles occurred at a pretty socially active age for most people. Did you withdraw socially to, I guess, hide your patterns or deal with it or anything like that?
I definitely became recluse to aid keeping it with me at all times and not having to worry about someone noticing or looking at me in a way that was like, ew, you're disgustingly skinny. So yeah, I did stay in and hide.
So still involved in modelling?
Yes, I took a big break though. I took a really big break, and I made sure that I was okay before I started again. But I had a lot of big realizations and reassessments before I started again, and I really value my health, and I know that that's what I need to feel good. And I built a healthy relationship with exercise and food, and I educated myself really on what it means to be healthy and what I need. And that was a rough thing for a little while because I couldn't work out the exercise versus intake, and then what's an appropriate amount. And sometimes I would exercise for 2 hours at a time, and then I went, that's too much. And then I had to assess how much I was going to eat, and I'd go, that's too little, or I don't feel good, that's too much. And to find that equilibrium was really difficult for a long time. And it's not an overnight process. It's very, very long road. But
was that something that sort of clicked for you one day, that I need to educate myself and get out of this? Or what was it that gave you that realization?
Okay, this is what I've always wanted to say to someone, because the last time I went on a podcast to talk about my eating disorder, I didn't get to what actually fixed me. I was in a very toxic relationship because I was just doing anything that was bad for me. And he would always talk about Tony Robbins, and I was like, okay, who's Tony Robbins? And then I saw who Tony Robbins was and what he did, and I immediately bought a ticket to his seminar in Sydney, and it was a 4-day seminar, and it changed my life. And I know that sounds like so outrageous, but it gave me the glimpse of hope that I needed, and I jumped to that bit of light, and I stuck to it like a fucking moth. I was not letting go of it because it was the first bit of light that I'd seen in 6 years. It was a new perspective and an introduction to life again, and I had been dead for so long.
What idea was it that you saw at the seminar that created that spark? It
was an assessment of the self and of your life, and really setting a fire behind you and dangling a carrot in front of you to run towards. So the fire behind everyone's was different. It was, he would ask you what your life would look like if you continued doing what you're doing, and imagine it in 5 years, imagine it in 10 years, imagine it in 20, imagine it if you make it this far to 50. And I was like, oh, the pain that struck through my sternum was just like, so many people broke down crying for their own reasons. I couldn't imagine that for myself. And he really made a point of it, and he made you really, really feel it for like a good 5 minutes of imagining this hell. It's your own version of hell. But basically, you set the fire behind you of what your version of hell looks like, and you create a new future for yourself, and you put it down on paper, and you work it out, and you aim towards that. And then you imagine you in this new version of yourself, and you have this immersive sensory experience to hope. He gives you hope, basically, and an idea and a goal and a plan. And that was
something that's planted a seed in your head, and you just chase that.
Yeah. And I had a lot of reasons to not do what I was doing. And I honestly, the last day of the seminar, it was a 4-day seminar. The last day, I didn't even talk to anyone while I was there. The last day, it was a health day, and they taught you about alkalizing your body and the different ways that we've been taught to eat, and how actually to eat, and what's really good for you, and just introduced me to my potential with where my energy was focused before into a positive version of that. So I really, really absorbed all of it. And I started eating organic, and I really, really took it all the way. Like there was not one thing that I put in my body that was bad. Like I wouldn't have a sip of Coke. Not that I would do that anyway, but just nothing came near me. And that worked for a while. And then I realized that I wasn't functioning in society very well with that, but it was just a new way of control as well. But at least it wasn't where I was at before. So, yeah, Tony Robbins, just circling back, Tony Robbins.
I only just heard about orthorexia
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
Never realised.
Had that too. That's usually, you know what? It was a necessary part of my recovery. It was necessary to exhaust every corner of the triangle of bulimia, anorexia, orthorexia. I had to know where my boundaries were so I could find the center.
I think most people these days are kind of teetering on the edge of that orthorexia. Most people you talk to are so obsessed with the quality of food they're putting in their body. And
What's orthorexia again?
Where you overthink or overanalyze the quality or the it's all about health to a point where it's dysfunctional.
Okay.
Yeah. Like what's in the dressing, how much olive oil, I need to know the mils. I need to chili's bad for your intestines. What's it? It's just,
Yeah, just over obsessive sort of.
That's what Tro's made that up. Intermittently is okay if you have a goal.
Yeah.
You want to do a liver detox and you've got to consume this, that, and the other, or you can't have this, that, and the other. But forever, I mean, not very functional.
Yeah.
Do you ever notice any of your bad habits creeping back in again, or any red flags? And
I always am aware of my inner dialogue. When I hear or observe that thought, negative thinking of you look fat, you've got to lose weight there. And it happens every day. Like I go through periods in a day still where I go, you're fat, different angle, different mirror. Ew, you look a bit thin there. And it's within a 5-minute interval. It's insanity. But I've come to observe it, let go of it, and let it just wash over me as opposed to, and it gets less and less every year. But yeah, I've just come to a place where I have to, you just let it go and on to the next thing. It's like meditation when you close your eyes and you're told to think about nothing. 1,000 things come to your head and then you let them go. It's like that.
How hard is it managing your work and roles in the appearance-focused modelling industry when you've got those processes going on daily?
I think it's not unfamiliar to have those thought processes or invasive thoughts. And I think that it's probably more to my benefit that I've experienced how bad that can be, to take it to the worst end of the spectrum, being hospitalised and whatnot, ruining my own life to a point where I hear it and I go, oh, see ya. It's less of a intoxicating, world-ending thought to me. So I deal with it quite well, I think, because I'm strong now. But before, it would break my back, and it did.
I suppose now you just identified before you've got your mind and your brain, but I think with a lot of mental health battles, a big realization is that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not a reality until you act on them or make them a reality. So I resonate with you saying just observing your thoughts and letting them carry on. I
think it's really good to find a mentor as well if you are struggling with an eating disorder, because you need something to aim towards and you need good fuel going into your mind. It's like you need good fuel going into your body. You're not going to get better by eating McDonald's. You're not going to get better by watching Desperate Housewives on TV or the Kardashians. You're going to get better by listening and reading educational books on things that are going to benefit you. It's things like gut health and neurology and working out the different reasons that you are repeating these patterns and self-sabotaging and trying to control something that is inevitably uncontrollable anyway. Jordan Peterson's very helpful. Tony Robbins was very helpful. Tim Ferriss was very helpful. Even some actors and actresses that you might resonate with were really helpful to me to watch. Like Lady Gaga had some great things to say because she had experienced bulimia before, and I knew that. Portia de Rossi was Ellen DeGeneres' wife. She had some good things to say. You'd be surprised how many women do struggle and have struggled, and do have some really golden nuggets of info to benefit.
What sacrifices did you see your mum and your stepdad and your uncle and the people who supported you make to help you through the battle?
Time, money, love, emotional capacity, just exhausted on it was a full-time job to make sure I was breathing, alive, not trying to die. Like I was trying to die slowly. It was like a slow suicide, and to the people who love you, you can imagine what you think about someone that you love. If they were doing that to themselves, how much it would drain you every day, and you'd be constantly thinking of ways to make them stop. It's exhausting. So my stepdad paid for my whole private hospital admission, which probably would have cost him as much as a private school, when my real dad was doing fucking nothing, still doing fucking nothing. And he just completely took that upon himself as a moral to just do that for me. So that's something that I've always felt very, I can't even put it into words. How lucky am I to have had that golden lottery for a stepdad. Like, you hear not good stories about some stepdads, or they just don't get along. It's not like that. It was just such a blessing to have that. And then my uncle always found a way to bring light to the situation with humor and comedy and entertainment. And my mum was always very honest and strong, because she felt, I've always been very connected to my mother, as everyone is, but I've really feel everything she feels, and she feels everything I feel. So she was always in agony, and she was always strong face for me. That's also very beautiful. And my sister was always just my little sister. She was so scared at that time, but she also put on a very brave face at a very young age when she didn't know what was going on. So yeah, everyone had a lot of strength and supported me so much, and it paid off. So yeah, I couldn't have been able to do it without them.
It's a common thing we hear on here, is that people's family members and those around them is what really helps them get through, and that it's a real team effort. And although this is something really uncharted ground for us, an eating disorder, something so,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know much about them, and obviously learning a lot today, but yeah, I could imagine that the people around you really could play a big role in that. Was it difficult to repair any relationships following your recovery, or is that still an ongoing process?
It's funny because when I recovered, I found myself understanding why I was hanging around probably the wrong people. So I grew, and I made new friends. I don't know. It was just, I grew a lot.
And with your mum and stepdad and your sister, were those relationships, they were easily repaired just because it's a family? Or?
It was new because when I had this new mindset of, I was so naive, and they all just kind of had to deal. They would have had to just deal with superfood Gandhi, Mrs. Flannery's herself, and the last, however many months before that, I was Slim Shady. So it's just, I can imagine that would have been quite a big shift for them, but they would have had to have still been supportive, because if they weren't, then what would I have done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For anyone that listens to this episode who might identify in themselves some of the patterns of behaviour you've discussed or early signs, what advice would you give to them?
One would be, I've got dot points. I thought about them a lot because this is the most important part of this podcast to me. Okay, so there are a lot of small realizations that I had along the road to recovery, but one of which is that recovery is a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. You need to be consistent and accountable. Nobody's going to fix you but you. And it's really common to idolize quick fix solutions with behaviors associated with eating disorders. Practice being present. Don't skip to, I've failed today. Take it moment to moment. I once heard a phrase, my auntie told me, she said, "How do you eat an elephant?" I said, "I have no idea." She said, "One bite at a time." And that really put things into perspective for me, because the concept of get better is, oh my God, it's so big. But if you just chip away at it every day, you will eventually come to recovery. 2, identify your voice, I, and make it the loudest, I being the person behind your thoughts. Do not listen to the negativity in your mind, the chatter. It is an anchor pulling you down. Practice severing that rope. Aim towards freedom and inner peace. Three is focus on something bigger than yourself, a goal, a project, or a dream. Something that gives you joy and purpose. Practice this daily and replace the energy otherwise being expelled into controlling the uncontrollable, which is food, weight, shape, whatever it might be for the individual. 4, knowledge is power. Invest your time in learning about how your neurology and gut health work. Your gut is your second brain, and make sure this ecosystem is healthy so the rest follows. Education on your physical and mental health will stop you from harming yourself and aid in your recovery long term. Because I can still call on things from when I was recovering that give me answers today as to why I shouldn't do something if I have a invasive, negative thought. 5, life doesn't rewind for you or go for eternity. You might as well allow yourself to experience joy while you are still alive.
Very good advice.
You could die tomorrow. You got to
could.
live your life to its fullest potential.
What did Russell Leary say? Live every day like it's
Live every day like it's a grand final.
Yeah.
Don't die with a dance left in you.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yeah. Exactly
Don't hide
right.
your dances. Get
That's,
them out, boogie.
Yeah. Something that, like, my perspective completely changed following my accident as well, that I was like, yeah, you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Just go have fun and don't worry as much. What is the biggest lesson you would say you've learned through your whole journey?
I can't draw it down to one. I learned so much so young, and I had so many pivotal moments and overwhelming, near impossible to condense into a solitary lesson. But what comes to mind is that life is seasonal. Don't let a bad winter kill all your crops. Keep ploughing, even when there's not a sprout in sight. And when you do not have a good day, or when you do have a good day, or a good thought, a sprout, nurture it and it will grow and repopulate. You must encourage your goodness and remember to nurture it. One day you will look back and remember that empty field that is now a thriving one, and you will thank yourself that you kept going.
I think that's good advice for everyone.
Absolutely.
All right, that is the end of our questions. So, Zoe, thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me,
having
guys.
a chat with us. And it could be a difficult thing to talk about. So,
Yeah.
it's going to spread a bit of education and hopefully help some people out there.
And I want to say as well, if anybody or any mothers or anyone that you know, listeners, feels that someone that is struggling needs help, feel free to reach out to me, and I will give you my best advice personally.
Yeah, you can find all Zoe's details on our Instagram page. She'll be tagged in stuff on there. So check that out and get in touch that way if you need.
Cool.
Thank you for coming on, being so honest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys. Another very real topic today. As always, Beyond Blue have given us a green light to offer their support. So if this episode, or any episode for that matter, bring up any negative emotions and you feel like you may need some support, please contact Beyond Blue on 1300 224 636, or go online to beyondblue.org.au and navigate their website to the online chat. Don't forget to check in on each other, and remember, it ain't weak to speak.
Very important as always, and especially important from that episode we just did. But now we look forward to the next episode, which is going to be a little bit different. We don't have a guest coming in for our next episode. It will just be Jack and I. And we're going to have a little bit of chat about mental health. It's something that's so prevalent in today's society, and something that, especially in men, is often overlooked and not spoken about. So next episode is going to be us having a bit of a chat about dealings in our own life and things we've seen about people around us, and as always touching on how it's affected loved ones. So tune into that one. Be pretty confronting for us to open up to you guys, but looking forward to it.
Very fitting one for November, #Movember. Also, guys, don't forget to check us out on our socials. Search the Unaffected Podcast on Facebook, or look us up on Instagram via the Unaffected_podcast, where you'll also find links to our YouTube and TikToks. You can also reach us via email on the unaffectedpod@gmail.com. So hit us up via any of those links with feedback or questions that you would like us to ask any of our past guests, or anything you'd like me and Nick to discuss next week when we have a chat about mental health.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.